Okay, part three for the Battle of Hattin. So, like I said, the last thing I said, there were five knights. Um, yeah, five knights who defected. Five knights um, five of Raymond's knights. I'm sorry, five of Raymond's knights. Defected to Saladin and told him of the dire situation in the Crusader camp. Thirsty and demoralized, the Crusaders broke camp and charged direction for the springs of Hattin, but the ragged approach was attacked by Saladin's army, which blocked the route forward and any possible retreat. Count Raymond launched two charges in an attempt to break through to the water supply at the Sea of Gali. The second the second of these saw him cut off from the main army and forced to retreat. Most of the Crusader infantry had effectively deserted by moving on to the horns of Hattin. Guy attempted to pitch the tents again to block Muslim cavalry, but without infantry protection, the knights' horses were cut down by Muslim archers, and the cavalry was forced to fight on foot. Then they too retreated to the horse. By now you can see that it's beginning to looks like an entire rout. But like I said previously, before, like my opinion, the Crusader armies defeated the moment they marched in the desert. Um, Now, the Crusaders were surrounded, and despite three desperate charges on Saladin's position, um, were eventually defeated. An eyewitness, and then there was an eyewitness account of this given by Saladin's son, and it's quoted. The quote goes, "When the king of the Franks, King Guy, was on the hill with that band, they made a formidable charge against the Muslims facing them, so that they drove them back to my father, Saladin. I looked towards him, and he was overcome by grief, and his complexion pale. He took hold of his beard and advanced, crying out, 'Give the tide to the devil!' The Muslims rallied, returned to the fight, and climbed the hill. When I saw that the Franks withdrew, pursued by the Muslims, I shouted for joy, 'We have beaten them!' But the Franks rallied and charged again, like the first time, drove the Muslims back to my father. He acted as he had done on the first occasion, and the Muslims turned upon the Franks and drove them back to the hill. I again shouted, 'We have beaten them!' But my father rounded on me and said, 'Be quiet! We have not beaten them until that tent, King Guy's tent, falls.' As he was speaking to me, the tent fell. The Sultan dismounted, prostrated himself in thanks to God Almighty, and wept for joy." End quote, by Saladin's son. And so this is now that was pretty much the end of the battle right there. As soon as the king fell, as soon as King Guy had no more fight in him, they had taken his tent. That was the end of the battle. Now I'm going to get to the aftermath of the Battle of Hattin. So the Muslim forces that had captured, the royal tent of King Guy, as well as a true cross. After the bishop was killed in the fight, and so prisoners included Guy, his brother, and a whole other ton of nobles. Basically just about every noble and baron was taken prisoner. Perhaps the only people who really escaped, perhaps only as few as 3,000 Christians ever escaped the defeat. Let's see. And there were some accounts that Raymond, Jocelyn, Balin, and Renaud of Sedan fled the field in the middle of the battle, trampling the Christians, the Turks, and the cross in the process. But this is not, corroborated by other accounts and reflects the author's hostility. So, just, once again, another supposed eyewitness accounts. We'll never know the whole true story, will we? So basically, exhausted captives were brought to Saladin's tent, where King Guy himself was given a goblet of ice water. Because Saladin, as much as he was I guess he was tough when it came to war, but he was always very compassionate. He tried to be compassionate toward his enemies. Particularly kings and nobles. As a matter of fact, like after during the Third Crusade, Saladin was very well known for his compassion towards King Richard the Lionheart. King Richard, that's a whole other story. I mean, this King Richard the Lionhearted from England trying to retake Jerusalem and launching the Third Crusade. This, happens, I believe in 1191, a long time after this battle. So, like a long time after this battle. But that's another story. So, but that's legendary. Saladin is legendary, known for his compassion toward others, as well as Richard the Lionhearted, and I believe Richard the Lionhearted was compassionate toward him too. So anyway, so like I said, Saladin, gave King Guy, goblet of ice water, as a sign of Saladin's generosity. And now when, King Guy passed the goblet to his fellow captain, Reynald, remember, Reynald was a dirty, rotten one who pretty much broke the truce and, pillaged, robbed, and raped Muslims whenever he could. Even through as a knight, he was hardly honorable as a knight, more like the dishonorable Black Knight, Dark Knight, whatever. So anyway, like when, Reynald tried to get a drink from King Guy, Saladin allowed the old man, Reynald was about 60, to drink. He allowed the old man to drink, but shortly after it said that, he had not offered water to Reynald and was not bound by the Muslim rules of hospitality. When Saladin accused of Reynald of being an oath breaker, Reynald replied, "Kings have always acted thus. I have done nothing more. I did nothing more," end quote. Saladin then executed Reynald himself, beheading him with his sword. Guy fell to his knees at the sight of Reynald's corpse, but Saladin bade him to rise, saying, "This man was only killed because of his magnificence and perfidy." So, anyway, meanwhile, the true cross was fixed upon down on the lance and sent to Damascus. Several of Saladin's men now left the army, taking Frankish prisoners with them as slaves. On Sunday, July 5th, Saladin traveled 6 miles to Tiberias, and there countless Yeshiva surrendered the citadel of the fortress. She was allowed to leave, but she was allowed though to leave for Tripoli with her family, followers, and possessions. Raymond of Tripoli, having escaped the battle, died later in 1187. On Monday, July 6, 2 days after the battle, the captured Templars and Hospitallers were given the opportunity to convert to Islam. The executions of prisoners ordered by Saladin were by beheading as an act of solidarity. Many of the captured crusaders falsely claimed to be Templar knights, forcing Saladin's men to behead them as well. A Knights Hospital venerated as a Christian martyr is said to be one of the victims. Okay. And one of the reasons was Saladin ordered them that they should be beheaded, choosing to have them dead rather than prison. He's, there actually some accounts, like, some prisoners actually, begged, that they begged for death, one account gives. So, Saladin, his face joyful, was sitting on his dais. The unbelievable show black despair. And that's just another saying. And King Guy himself was taken to Damascus as prisoners, and others were eventually ransomed. And of course, like after this battle, most of the Crusader forces were at the moment like vanquished. So by mid-September, Saladin had taken a whole bunch of other main Crusader city-states like Acre, Nablus, Jaffa, Tehran, Beirut, Ascalon, Tyre. This one city, Tyre, Tire, Tyre was saved by the rival of Conrad of Montferrat. And but now Jerusalem, on the other hand, Jerusalem was defended by Queen Sibylla, and then Balen, and Petrus, Horatius. Forgive me, there's so much information here. Who actually negotiated its surrender to Saladin on October 2nd. This is a whole other matter. So October 2nd was the siege of Jerusalem, and so then that was like the big one for the Muslims. And October 2nd, they actually, took Jerusalem because, rather than face like first certain death, like the Crusader forces, like in Sabila Baylan, who are occupying Jerusalem, just rather negotiate in this terms of surrender to Saladin. And I recall like terms of surrender with Saladin that as long Saladin would be given the keys to the city as long as he made a promise not to harm any Christian or any Jewish any person of any faith in Jerusalem, that they will be allowed safe passage from the city to wherever. So this Saladin agreed. Any Christian can go where he pleases. They will not be harmed. I promise. So again, that's you can see that part in the movie too, Kingdom of Heaven. So okay, so after the news of the disastrous defeat of Hattin was brought to Europe by some Archbishop of Tyre, Josephus, as well as other pilgrims and pilgrims and travelers, plans were immediately made for a new crusade. Pope Gregory VIII issued a new bull, and in England and France, so that began the Third Crusade, which didn't really get underway until 1189. Anyway, which included, of course, Richard the Lionhearted. Anyway, so that's pretty much that for the Battle of Hattin, and I know it's been quite a long history lesson, and forgive me, I'm not the best speaker in the world. I try to do what I can, and there was a lot of information thrown there, and it's there's a lot of maybe some names I don't know if I pronounce them correctly. I may have not. Oh well, what can I say? But I guess I could to conclude this it can conclude on the Battle of Hattin. It's like like I said before, I said it again. The big hinge factor was that the Crusader kingdom, the Crusader armies under King Guy marching through that hot desert to the battlefield in that thick metal armor. That itself was like a huge blow to the army. I mean, Saladin didn't even have to do anything at that point. He just simply waited for the army to come to him, which was smart because he just knew the Crusader ways. I mean, he knew they wear that armor, and they knew they had the strategy based on chivalry and honor. They were marched to the death under disastrous conditions, all for honor and glory and chivalry. So, and Saladin's Muslim forces, of course, they were better dressed for desert warfare. They knew the terrain, while the Crusader armies in that hot metal armor, in my opinion, they were defeated even before the battle took place. And of course, like when the battle took place, they were easily defeated. And of course, the loss of the True Cross really, really, really demoralized the Crusader cause. And as a matter of fact, I would say this, as a matter of fact, this was the end of the Crusades for the Christians. One more final part to wrap this up. So part 3 is now ending. One more final part to wrap this up.